Mhm. Welcome, everyone. We're going to get started in one moment, give people a chance to hop on. This is the Political Roundup with me, Robyn Donaldson.
And Halliburton.
Yes, and Lynn Halliburton. So we will be right back. We're just going to give people a chance to hop on. And let's take a look at Michelle Obama's speech while we wait.
You know, folks are going to do everything they can to distort her truth. My husband and I sadly know a little something about this. For years, Donald Trump did everything in his power to try to make people fear us. See, his limited, narrow view of the world made him feel threatened by the existence of two hardworking, highly educated, successful people who happen to be Black. I want to know who's going to tell him that the job he's currently seeking might just be one of those Black jobs. You know, folks, for years, Donald Trump did everything.
That is amazing. Oh my gosh. All right. So welcome, everyone.
You want to unpack what she said?
Yes, after you.
Well, I was pleasantly surprised to see the Obamas. I didn't really quite know what angle they were going to do their speech on. They tend to stay above the fray, which is why we love them. But I felt like they came to play when they did their speech at the DNC this year. Like, just very, they hit all the right messaging points. I love Michelle's messaging where she was like, Trump's after this Black job, meaning Kamala's eventual presidency. That's the kind of messaging we need going into this election. Like, forget the when they go low, we go high stuff. Like, hit him in the mouth. I loved her message on Trump was spreading fear to his base about essentially black excellence. Like, a lot of Trump's base, they're threatened by the success that a lot of Black people have nowadays. They think that we're taking jobs from them or we're taking opportunities, when really that's not the case. We're finally in a place where the playing field is leveled. And Trump twisting that to mean that no, they're taking your opportunities, they're taking your shot at the American dream, when really the American dream is available for everybody. But Trump is using that insecurity that a lot of his base has to divide America.
Absolutely. I was the same. I didn't know what to expect. I thought I thought with President Obama that maybe, or Barack Obama, that maybe he would focus more on democracy, which he did, he touched on, but they were way more punchy than I have seen them. And then for both of them to do it, it wasn't like they were trying to balance each other out. I think they had their legit experiences and grievances and everything else. But I really enjoyed Michelle Obama. They called her the closer for a reason, back in 2008. And I think I mean, just everything from just the whole aesthetic of her outfit, and then the the long pony, the shell pony, I think it's being called now. And it was just different from some of the presentations she's like given in the past at the convention. So I enjoyed that. And I did enjoy that she went, like you said, right for the jugular to that Black jobs comment, and I mean, and just to even be trying to racialize employment, in this country, when employment is, so shaky, for many, and, just in terms, or just even if you are employed and just a couple of checks away, or someone close to your family who doesn't have health insurance, or, any kind of instability for people. I mean, I think a lot of Americans can relate to that, or if it's not them, it's someone close to them, or at least somebody that they know. So it was good for her to just go right to that, because he does try to divide, particularly Black and Latino voting blocks when it comes to jobs, and then this whole thing about the border and it's so disgusting too, and it does work because of some of the larger systemic issues, but you know, a lot of the other systemic issues happening in communities, and then you have, you know, at least like in areas like Chicago, and I'm sure you've had your experience in New York, you know, the whole migrant issue and everything else. He uses that to just, you know, pit communities against each other, and instead of just talking about the actual systemic issues that, you know, he hasn't really he benefited from that economy. And then now he's going to benefit again from what the Biden administration did, and what Vice Harris is going to do in order to push his economic agenda, when really all he has done is enrich himself. So I'm glad she like took that shot, and she nailed it. So very proud of her. So let's see. I know I want to, it's funny because normally we, you know, maybe we've chatted or, you know, sent some things back and forth about, you know, this week's stories, but a couple of these we really haven't talked about yet. So we wanted to get into those. We gave people a little time to join. So for those of you who do not know us yet, again, I'm Robyn and that's Lynn. And this is our weekly political roundup that we're doing from now through the end of the election. Go ahead and share my screen. Okay, perfect. Okay, so we'll be here each Sunday. It's going to be interesting because it's getting really, really ready to ratchet up now that the convention is over. Both conventions are over. And we're headed into the fall where people start paying more attention. So if you're interested, for those of you who want to connect outside of the virtual space, because I know a lot of you are listening via Facebook or Facebook groups, this week we're launching Team Yes We Can. We're focused on battleground states, doing phone banking, volunteer recruitment calls, recruiting people to join voter protection, be poll workers, et cetera. Anything that can help Georgia and Wisconsin, and you know, particularly, and then you know, we're doing a little work with Florida and maybe perhaps North Carolina. But right now our focus is Georgia and Wisconsin, at least for the next couple of weeks, and then as needed, we'll help other places. So if you want to join, just go to the Team Stacey Abrams Facebook group, or you can look on my page. If you're looking on my personal page, I'll tag Lynn in as well, so you can share it with your friends, and definitely join us. Check us out. We're meeting via Zoom, and you just register and we'll send you the Zoom link. Also tomorrow, I'm offering a Mental Health Monday offering for a little bit of an election breather to help regulate our nervous systems. We do some breath work, some gentle movements and stretching, and just calming ourselves down, which is nice because when you do that, you make space in your nervous system and your mind, you bring more clarity, creativity, and you just let go of some of the stress of just this election season, which is just, you know, we're just getting ramped up, you know, now that the summer is it's closing out. But so that's my offering. Join us again, just register and I will send you the link. And we'll get back into who we are in a second, but I just wanted to go straight into this week's stories because we have some videos pulled up, and I think we should start with let's see, do you want to start with RFK, or do we want to just go into a little bit with JD Vance? I'll let you choose, Lynn.
Go with the donut man.
All right, let's do it. Okay, so this is JD Vance. I believe he's in Georgia.
Yes.
Okay, so we're just gonna watch this and then we'll give our thoughts.
The zoo has come to town. Thank you for letting us come in here.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, Nate? Okay, yeah. She doesn't want to be on film, guys, so just cut her out of anything. Appreciate that, man. I'm JD Vance, American Vice President of Tennessee.
Okay.
How long you want to?
I've been here since the beginning of July
Okay.
of this year.
Okay. Yeah. How are you, sir?
Almost 2 years.
Okay. Good. Helps to everything. Yeah, I mean, a lot of glaze here, some sprinkle stuff, some of these cinnamon rolls, just whatever makes sense. How long has this place been around?
About 4 years.
About 4 years? Okay. How long have you been here?
A little over 6 months.
Okay, good.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So hold on. One minute.
Cringe. I love like how he introduced himself. He was like, "I'm JD Vance. I'm running for vice president," and she was like, "Okay." And then second thing, he's like, "Let me get some glaze. Let me get like some cinnamon rolls, whatever makes sense." Like, who orders like that? Like, he just is not relatable to people, the so-called base that he claims to have so much in common with. Like, he can't even talk to normal people. And it's, in my opinion, it was hilarious to see him in Georgia talking to a Black woman who she may be childless, and it's just hilarious that he's going to try to have something in common with her given so much rhetoric he spoke of before.
Mhm. I'm glad that now we have a ticket, so it's like a focus, on both sides, but definitely for the Democrats, because he has just been out there running reckless for far too long, going unaddressed on some things. So when I saw this, yeah, it was awkward. It was a little strange, especially for, again, someone who is running for vice president, meaning a step away from the presidency, even just what we've seen, regardless of how you feel, just what we've seen with, things changing and the tickets and all that. So this man could be president one day. And it just was very odd that he couldn't have just a real conversation. I mean, there's so many things. He always talks about the, economy and this and that. That was a perfect time,
Mhm.
to talk to somebody at their job, their job and everything. And then it was funny because I'm just like, what? And then she didn't want to be on camera, but then the audio was still going and you heard her voice.
Yeah.
That was weird. I'm like, that's okay. But yeah, I didn't really totally get. And then, and then what makes matters worse, or is that then another employee comes and he still can't have a conversation even with that person who was okay being on camera. So I didn't really.
Yeah.
I just did not get it, and he just does not seem ready to be vice president, let alone president. And I don't even know if he can really handle this campaign. Honestly, like I don't think so, but he's a
Yeah, he was like, "How long you guys been open?" And she was like, "Oh, about a couple years." "Oh, I thought it was like 20 years because you never know." "Okay, good. Okay, good." Like, just can't have a conversation with people. And I'm like, why did Trump pick this dude? Like, just incredibly awkward. Like, incredibly weird. And I just think we're gonna have more cringe moments going forward with him.
I think so too. I mean, I couldn't even really believe that he was a senator, honestly. Like
Right.
he just does not seem like, when I say he doesn't seem like he knows what's going on, I'm not even just trying to be shady, but even that whole thing when he tried to roll up to the vice president's plane, because they both were
Yeah.
on the tarmac. We talked about that last week. Like some of that protocol and those stunts and things, it's not presidential, or just doesn't seem like he's understanding certain protocol, and stuff. And so that was like one thing. And then now this, like a very, you're going into a donut shop, a local business, real people working. You could have asked anything. I don't know. I'm not understanding this man. I really am not.
Well, like you mentioned earlier, they're so big on getting the economy back together. He could have asked, how are you making ends meet?
The country's
More
going in the right direction.
exactly. So I was a little bit surprised that he didn't have more to say to her, but maybe he doesn't even consider her vote worthy. So you never know.
No, that is very true. That is very true. I definitely feel like he is trying to, I notice every time he gives a lot of these press conferences in different places, he'll have, at least I've seen it in Wisconsin, he'll have police behind him, or something like that, signaling. But when it comes to him actually, like in real life, it seems like interacting in real life situations, something is a little off. And the thing is, it's not just us, because when you look at his polling, Republicans and Democrats have him in like the 30s, 20s. So he's not going over very well. And rumor has it Trump at one point was really upset that he had him, you know, that he chose him and he had him on the ticket. And I'm not sure totally, I guess maybe he's, you know, to reach younger men, maybe, you know, that appeal or a certain area, but I don't really see how he's adding so much to Trump.
I think the reason why the polling is so low with regards to JD Vance is he's not authentic, and people can easily see through that. In my opinion, I don't believe he believes a lot of the rhetoric that comes out of his mouth. I think he's playing a Trump space, and it's not going over well because I don't believe he really feels that way in some aspects. I think he's an opportunist who saw this opportunity to be Trump's VP as his ticket to potentially the White House as president one day, and he's not coming across well.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look definitely a little bit deeper into this guy. I mean, every time I hear a little something about him, the off is like, I don't know, that's like the best word I can
Yeah,
describe it. Like just something's a little, you know,
right.
just a little strange, or, you know, I mean, and yeah, I'm just gonna look more into him because if he can't have a conversation and be authentic with a regular, you know, an everyday person, like he strikes me as one who's probably just, I mean, as we saw in real life, regardless of the camp, like he probably doesn't really stop and engage with people anyway, who he thinks are below him or not, you know, and I just don't believe that Harris, you know, she's had a career in public service, and working with communities and things like that. And yeah, he just doesn't strike me like he can even relate to the average person, let alone legislate for them and think about, or not legislate, but, you know, even present policies that can be legislated to be turned into law. And it's just, I got to look more into him and see what's up with this guy. But
Well, Trump definitely should have looked more into victim. But to back off of your point, as much criticism that Kamala gets about, the fact that she loves to laugh or she's, sometimes goofy, it comes across well. It comes across as authentic. And that's incredibly important if you're going to be running as president. You need to connect to your voter. And I think she's done a phenomenal job at doing that.
absolutely. All right, so let's see here. Okay, so I guess we're just gonna stick with strange. So what do you think about RFK endorsing, well, first of all, getting out of the race, but yet he's staying on the ballot in some places, but yet don't vote for him in some place. So he's not even really at, but then endorsing Trump, or what do you think about this, Lynn?
Yeah, to my knowledge, I believe he's staying on the ballot in Michigan, which I'm not sure what the point of that is, because that's a swing state that Trump needs to win. So he's going to split the vote. Um, Incredibly weird that Trump is aligning himself with RFK. Like, how far right could you get if you're Trump? Like, in my opinion, Trump needs to be running as a moderate Republican to get and win back a lot of those moderate Republicans that crossed over and voted for Joe Biden in 2020. And then you align yourself with just freaks, to be honest. It's like, what kind of campaign are you running? You're alienating yourself from the majority of the country when you do this. Um, in my opinion, I thought with RFK in the race, I thought he could potentially split the vote running as an independent. Now that he's dropped out and endorsed Trump, I don't believe it's going to have the effect that Trump wants it to. I think Trump is seeing this as a way to sort of boost his polling and to compete with Harris on that platform. I believe it's going to have the opposite effect. I believe it's going to bring the Trump and JD Vance ticket down, and people don't want this kind of stuff. It's extremism. It doesn't make sense. You're turning off a lot of moderate Republicans when you align yourself with him.
Absolutely. Trump, and you're right, because when you're saying Trump, you know, he cares about the poll numbers and, you know, how he's stacking up against Harris. And, you know, he's all about grabbing the headline in the media, you know. I mean, it's very interesting because, like, you know, we've had the convention, we've had all these things going on, and he's been trying to grab the headlines, and it's just not quite working in the same way. And so I think this was supposed to be his huge, after the convention and his huge news. And you're right, like I don't really know how this helps him, he definitely needs more women,
Right.
and there's no representation, and not even just represented, but I'm thinking like if Trump had chosen Nikki Haley as his VP,
Right.
then they had RFK come out, that might have been a little bit more,
Right.
of something. But I just know RFK, he's got some far out there dark things going on, when you start looking into him, and that's just not, Republicans say that, Democrats have said that. I don't see
Right.
how this helps. And then it just also kind of, to me, makes RFK look like, what do they call him? Not like a charlatan, but just, it's just like like kind of like Vance, like, just, he tried to, just trying to get an opportunity. He tried to contact the Harris campaign to get some sort of cabinet seat, and then he contacted Trump, and it's kind of like, what was the point of running? Like, it's not authentic. What are, these values that you're running on? It's very bizarre. So we'll just play a little bit so people can kind of judge for themselves. I gave a thumbs down. Judge for themselves. So anyway, here we go. And I do not believe the Foo Fighters gave them permission. Is that who this? They did?
They did not. They came out and said they had permission.
Yeah, I was like, I highly doubt this. Okay.
Whoa. And he deserves it. He deserves it. For the past 16 months, Bobby has run.
Oh,
nothing works on this acne.
No, he did not with Bob. Okay. When after this ad is over, real quick, but that people are saying, people are confusing because there's so many Kennedys. People are
Right.
confusing him with different Kennedys. And
Right.
I can tell you just off of name recognition, I mean, that in itself is so powerful. So the fact that he's out here, Bobby and all, very clever.
Right.
Trump is very clever when it comes to these media moments.
For President of the United States, I know, because he also went after me a couple of times. I didn't like it. And I mean this sincerely. Had he been allowed to enter the Democrat primary, he would have easily beaten Joe Biden, but they wouldn't let him in.
Okay.
A few hours after the assassination attempt at Butler, I got a call from a safe food advocate named Kelly Means, who's been fighting for many years to try to end the corruption at CDC and FDA.
Okay. Like, I don't even believe that. Sorry. Okay, so RFK. I do feel like, again, like you're saying, I don't really see how it helps them. Whatever little bit of support that can come from RFK, still, they're not large enough numbers to just, completely allow Trump to win. But of course, in close elections and on the Electoral College, depending on, where things are, if it was today, I don't, some places it could have, some of an impact. But then I also wondered, will the RFK voter either still vote for RFK if he's on the ballot anyway, or stay home if they don't want either of those candidates? If there's any RFK voters out there, I would love, I don't know if, I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear from you. So if there is somebody.
The whole thing is crazy. Like, why are you staying on the ballot in some states, but yet you're endorsing Trump? Like, do you still want to win this thing? it's bizarre, and I think it's gonna backfire on Trump.
I
It's
feel
also that the Kennedy family has come out and denounced him endorsing Trump, and his wife, RFK's wife, Cheryl Hines, she came out and said something about, I'm sad that he's ending his campaign. He wanted to, do so much for America, but it's incredibly telling. She did not have an opinion on him endorsing Trump. So I'm like, are you co-signing this? What's going on?
right. I mean, it's, I understand fully how people want there to be more than two parties. And I totally understand that. I've felt that at times. And then, the whole thing is too, it's, the way the systems and things are designed, it's for a two-party system, really. And it makes it very difficult for other parties to gain traction for a variety of reasons. But there is one thing if that's the work of what you're doing, and then it's another thing when you are trying to elect a president or keep democracy, intact. And I'm just not understanding, if what RFK's intentions and motives are, so I'm like, if this is just about stirring up the system, and then, like you said, stay on the ballot, let people, or, vote for you, or expose the inequalities and the ballot process for people, for people outside that two-party system to get on. But I don't understand why then he would go and endorse Trump. And then again, some of the things that he's talking about do not align with what Trump is talking about, and that part does not make any sense. So then it just feels like, okay, he's just coming on to be a spoiler to the Dems, and we'll go with whoever or whatever that can get him a job, I guess, in somebody's cabinet.
Exactly.
Oh, man, I mean, it's just so bizarre that this is where we're at. I just cannot.
City villains, like they're just coming out of the woodwork. Like it's incredibly crazy on Team Trump's side.
And, another thing too, this whole thing about these endorsements. So we've been seeing this, and we'll get into the DNC convention in a second, but so many Republicans have been coming out against Trump,
Mhm.
and for me, it was just shocking when I heard Illinois, former governor of Illinois, Jim Edgar, he was on a list, and he's a very, just run of the mill, old school Republican or whatever. So Pence, former vice president, working with Donald Trump, everything. I get why he wouldn't, obviously, January 6th and, everything else. And the fact that Trump did not care if this man lived or died that day. But he hasn't said anything. So now you have RFK's spouse not saying anything. So I just hope people are reading between the lines, but it's very telling. And, it makes me, even because that takes a lot of even courage to go against and not come out for those people. So something definitely I think people need to pay attention to.
For sure.
All right. So let's get into the DNC. So when you were going into the convention, watching the convention, first of all, how did you watch the convention?
I watched it streaming on YouTube on my phone. I was traveling and doing other stuff, watched bits and pieces, and then watched some of the recaps the next day on the news.
Same. Well, I think I was out, and I was working my way home, and at first I was like, okay, I'm just not gonna be able to see it till I get home. And then I was like, wait, oh, it's live on YouTube. So that was kind of like my first, engagement with it. And I think that was, I forgot which moment it was, but I was just thinking like how that was even different, watching the convention on our phones. And have you heard about this story regarding social media influencers having more access at the convention than regular press? Have you heard about this?
I did. There was like a ton of influencers there this convention, which is I see the benefit of it. I definitely see they have a following. I see the need to engage the youth vote. I was just surprised that there was just so many compared to the press. I don't know if that was deliberate or it just shook out like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so apparently, the DNC, or I don't know if it's the DNC, probably the DNC, they prioritized the social media influencers, and they had more access to the floor. And I guess, and not to say that the press did not, that's not what I'm saying, but there were other YouTube shows, political shows, and pundits and people like that who have, followings and shows on YouTube. And apparently they were seated, much up in the 300, area. And they were surprised to see, certain TikTokers. But, at the end of the day, we are living in this digital world, and these campaigns are different, especially since the pandemic and quarantine, when, as we know, so much of the organizing was done online.
Definitely. Like I said, this is the new modern digital age, and it makes sense to reach out to those influencers.
Did you have a favorite part of the convention, or what were some of a couple of your favorite highlights?
Loved Hillary Clinton's speech. Big respect for her. I am pleasantly surprised just how much of a cheerleader she is for Kamala. Um, Considering, Hillary ran twice for president, and especially last time it didn't go so well. Incredibly happy to see her embracing Kamala. It's not necessarily an indictment on Hillary Clinton. I was just surprised because I think the natural, maybe I'm just jaded, but I just thought the natural reaction to maybe Kamala running was maybe like some jealousy or something. But I don't think
Very good.
she's lifting Kamala up. She's her biggest champion. In that speech, I think she really cemented her legacy, Hillary Clinton, because I believe Hillary took the movement in a certain direction in 2016 that allowed us to do what we're doing now in 2024 with potentially electing our first female president. So Hillary Clinton definitely deserves her props for that, especially.
Absolutely. Yes. That's funny because it was on my notes. Like, Hillary was one of the first, pieces of convention that stuck out to me. But I was like, no, let me wait and see what Lynn, so that's funny. Like, that was the first thing that came up, but not funny because it's like, it's Hillary. So it's she's unbelievable, regardless of what you feel about her, in the end. She definitely is a key historical figure in American politics and history. Yes. And so we're going to take a little glimpse at her speech, but one thing I did want to say was, some people don't even know that, when Hillary and Bill Clinton were both in law school, the team that was prosecuting Richard Nixon approached Bill Clinton about being on the legal team. And I think, I don't know, I mean, he could have had presidential aspirations at that point, or governor aspirations, or whatever, that maybe he didn't feel comfortable being on that case, or maybe had other things going on. I can't remember, but he recommended his girlfriend at the time, Hillary Rodham, and she worked on that legal case against President Nixon. And so ever since, she has, to me, like, she has been on the radar, so there have been there's decades and decades of attacks, against Hillary, that she has sustained and sometimes has not. And so for her to still, like you said, be here and supporting Vice President Harris in this historical moment, and being on the precipice of history, it's tremendous, because she took so many hits for so long, for Bill, the party, America, women, you name it. So we'll hear a little bit of her speech.
Former Secretary of State.
I'm just gonna forward a little. All right, it's like a 10-minute standing ovation. Okay.
Something is happening in America. You can feel it. Something we've worked for and dreamed of for a long time. First, though, let's salute President Biden. You know, my mother Dorothy was born right here in Chicago before women had the right to vote. That changed 104 years ago yesterday. Think about it. Tennessee became the final state. To ratify the 19th Amendment to the Constitution. The state legislature was deadlocked until one lawmaker's mother, a widow who read 3 newspapers a day, sent a letter to her son. No more delays, she wrote. Give us the vote. And since that day, every generation has carried the torch forward.
Wow. That's crazy. 104 years. Woo. America.
Wow.
I know. Yeah, I feel like she is just really, and you know, when they used to call her like a policy wonk and, you know, stuff, I don't know, it was like back in the day. She just really cares, you know what I mean? Like she really genuinely cares about this country and our government. I mean, even after so many times that first time she ran and then she served, you know, under the Obama administration and everything else, you know, that still took a lot, you know, a lot of humility, and she still was able to impact the world. And there's not a lot of, you know, people who have been through a lot of things that she's been through, and especially on the public stage, that she could still stand there and again come off authentic. Like she looked genuinely like well rested, happy, you know, joyful to be able to come in and support Kamala. So that means a lot.
For sure. She's what you want in a public servant, just that humility, like you mentioned. Um, like I said, we got to give it up to Hillary. She made a definite dent into the movement, the cause, and we have a female president in November. You got to give props to Hillary. She definitely had a hand in um, getting people acquainted with the idea of a female president, and then her support is going to be, her endorsement is going to be pretty strong going forward for Kamala, definitely, just in terms of getting the female voters who wanted Hillary in 2016 to win, and also Hillary Clinton's a huge fundraiser. So I'm excited to see how that's going to play out for Kamala.
Definitely. And I do hope that people can, you know, well, like older white women over 60, no, but seriously, because these are these demographics that Harris needs to improve upon.
Yeah.
And so, you know, when you think about Hillary Clinton, I couldn't even believe she's 76. I had to look it up. Like she is of a certain generation. And like she was saying, her mom was born when women couldn't even vote, you know, born right there in right outside Chicago, Illinois, when women couldn't vote. And that is tremendous, you know, and for a woman to be born at that time and couldn't vote, and then she has a daughter that went on to run for president. That is outstanding, you know, and it just shows you we're far, but not as far as we need to be, because literally she just made history in 2008, being a woman on, you know, the top of the ticket of a major party, you know, running for president. So.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of debt to Hillary. And then I will say this before we wrap up, because like we can talk about Hillary all day, but the fact that she mentioned, you know, Shirley Chisholm, and a couple other people mentioned her, and, you know, gave homage to various women who did, you know, have a hand in, you know, breaking through, you know, some of those barriers, because, you know, the only reason we haven't had these opportunities is because we have been blocked out of a lot of things, you know, legally and otherwise.
Definitely. She stands on the shoulders of strong women, and I love that she gave them a shout out. Because really it's been It's been everybody, like you just said, those that she mentioned who have led up to this moment that we're in. So I loved, towards the end of her speech, she was saying like, women in her family, previous generations of strong women, they're no longer here to see this moment in time, but if they could see what's going on now, they would say, keep going. And it just made me think about, I'm sure there's women in your family that are no longer here. There's women in my family that are no longer here, but I wish they could witness this moment in time because this is something women for years have worked towards.
Absolutely. And sometimes too, it's, when something is new or different, people sometimes who are still open to it, but then they get fearful or afraid, like, oh, it's not going to happen, or they don't want to get their hopes up. And there's definitely trauma, I think, in the Democratic space and otherwise regarding 2016 and Trump beating Hillary and, all of that. And some of it is rightfully so. And then some of it is just fear, fear of the unknown and afraid to hope, but we need to have that hope. Okay, so the next story I'm gonna bring up here is, okay, so this is the person who just really stole the show and the hearts and minds of many Americans. Gus Walls.
If you've never experienced the hell that is infertility, I guarantee you, you know somebody who has. And I can remember praying each night for a phone call, the pit in your stomach when the phone had rang, and the absolute agony when we heard the treatments hadn't worked. It took Gwen and I years, but we had access to fertility treatments. And when our daughter was born, we named her Hope. Hope, Gus, and Gwen, you are my entire world, and I love you. I'm letting you in. If you've never experienced the hell.
I love that moment.
Yeah, he turned out to be a wise choice. Whoever was part of the vetting team of Kamala's, whoever her advisor is, they hit it out the park with this one.
They did. They absolutely. It was funny. I listened to this YouTube with Beto O'Rourke. He was being interviewed, a YouTube show, and he was being interviewed, and he was saying, he was like, yeah, there were a lot of, because he, is friendly with several, and he said, yeah, she had a lot of great options, and he did put Bashir's name in there because he's in the South, because we'll have to do a whole show on how the mainstream tries to block Southern politics outside of Georgia. Georgia's the belle of the ball, as it should be, but it's just interesting. Beto, we could have a whole conversation about that, but he was saying he didn't think that she was going to pick Walz, because he was like, oh yeah, like kind of like people like that don't get picked normally, or just the fact that he just had he'd been in the Congress, and then he had also been a governor, and just he just didn't think that would be someone she would pick. And so he was even pleasantly surprised and everything. And he said, I think it's a choice where even if America didn't see that they needed a Walz, now they do. So I love Walz and Gwen and Gus and Hope and the fam. And I just thought that was such an endearing moment, because really even the first night, Tim was overwhelmed and so humbled himself that first night. I mean, because he has been on a roller coaster. First of all, he had already been supporting the administration, and I think he was the head of the Governors Association like a year or two ago, and he had sort of been courting, for just in case they needed a VP. That's, based on reports and everything. Then he is chosen, that lead up to being chosen, the Veep stakes. But then from there, I mean, they have been, just like going, all the rallies, all of the traveling, all of the connecting with voters. And so for him to then get to the first night of the convention, and then you have like Hillary Clinton and, all these people, AOC, and just, various people, whoever spoke that night, addressing him in the ticket, he was just taking it all in. So from that moment to now, him getting up there and his family seeing him, that and then just that in general is a lot in itself, let alone what he was saying before that about the IVF treatments and the emotional toll and financial, toll that took on his family. And when he said he had access, he's kind of saying like, yeah, they had access and the ability and the means or insurance or whatever to do that. So many couples and people out there don't, so the whole thing was just, you can't script that. It was truly sincere and authentic and loving, and it was really wonderful to see that.
Yeah, Tim comes across well, and compare and contrast him to JD Vance, who's just as inauthentic as you can get. Tim Waltz is incredibly humble. He's a family man. I believe you can tell that from just how he conducts himself. Um, I actually really like the chemistry that him and Kamala have. I've seen some of their footage of them campaigning. There was like footage of them in a gas store picking out chips and stuff. Just incredibly funny. He doesn't take himself serious, but when it comes to the issues, obviously he is serious. I loved his white guy taco thing. Just he can make fun of himself. That's what we need, because this campaign is going to get incredibly dark quick. I believe it's already gotten there. And you need someone to just be America's dad during this time we find ourselves in.
Yes, absolutely. It's funny because I feel like with Tim, you could tell that he doesn't take himself too seriously, which I appreciate, especially in this kind of arena, because you do need to have a little bit of authentic, joyful energy. It's like that word joyful is getting thrown around so much, but it's real because it is, politics and campaigns they're so intense, and there are serious issues. But I like that he kind of just kind of makes her laugh. And it seems like he kind of allows her to put her guard down a little bit, at the
Yeah.
same time too. So if that's a good, simpatico working relationship and she vibes all of him, then that is, that's a huge plus because, they have a lot of work to do in such a short amount of time, so, so it's really good. And then I like that with his family, it's an authentic story, regarding reproductive health, insurance covering certain, services and process for people who do want to, have a child. And it's again, you can't script this. It is from a genuine place. And I think that's something a lot of Americans can relate to. And I like too that, of course, that he's a teacher, he and Gwen. I come from a family of educators. And again, they can relate to people, small, little people, adults, and they understand families. You have to understand families, and how real people live in order to be able to be in education and teaching and coaching and everything else. So I feel very secure with them in a sense, because I just know that they understand everyday people and they're not just putting on or, trying to awkwardly order a donut. So love the walls. Very good. Okay. So in terms of who else stood out to you during the convention?
I loved Pete Buttigieg's speech. Pete Buttigieg always has a crafty way to put something in terms of messaging, and he's got an incredible sense of media savvy. I loved his swipe at JD Vance about how JD Vance believes that people who do not have children, they're not concerned about the future, or they don't have like a strong physical commitment to the future of the country. And Pete Buttigieg was like, I served overseas. I was childless at the time, and I served with other colleagues who are also childless. And I believe we definitely had a firm physical commitment to the future of the country, serving in Iraq and whatnot. I love the Olivia Pope and Fitz moment. I loved Kerry Washington's little spiel where she had the nieces properly pronounce how to say Kamala Harris. That's she led the class in that, because some people will act like they don't know how to pronounce her name. But those were a few standouts for me.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. So let's see if I can find the nieces here. That was so funny. I'm like Googling Olivia Pope nieces. Mary Washington. Okay. Yeah, let's just see a little bit of this.
It's come to my attention that there are some folks who struggle or pretend to struggle.
This is like a PSA we need to play,
Yeah.
because sometimes people just genuinely don't pronounce it correctly because they've heard so many people of stature mispronounce it on purpose. You know what I mean?
Right.
Whether you're the president, former Trump, or, someone on YouTube or wherever else. So this legit is like a real PSA.
With proper pronunciation of our future president's name. So, hear me out. Confusion is understandable. Disrespect is not. We want to have everyone get it right. Here to help me are some very special guests. Thank you, ladies. Can you tell us your names?
Hello, everybody. My name's Amara. And my name is Alila, her little sister.
And what are you here to do?
To teach you how to say your auntie's name.
Okay. So, how do you pronounce it?
First, you say comma like a comma in a sentence. Then you say la like la 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 la.
Put it together and it's 1, 2, 3. Kamala. All right, so let's practice. Let's practice.
Everybody over here, say comma.
Together.
I mean, I just thought that moment was genius.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I had like I came into this convention, no expectations halfway because the ticket changed. All this stuff was happening, the VP, it's only been a month, everyone. So I didn't know what the heck was going to happen. I knew they had certain things just in place in general for the convention, but in terms of how much they were going to have it be Kamala or sorry, the Harris campaign or the Biden campaign, and then the DNC and everyone else. The whole thing, I hope we can hear behind the scenes, like how that was even all carried out. But shout out to Mignon Moore. She, African-American woman who's key in the DNC and the production and the whole process of this convention. So she and her team and everybody who involved, they really did that.
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised just how each day of the convention was so entertaining and engaging. It was also incredibly interesting to see how much media attention it garnished and completely wiped Trump and what JD Vance was doing off the radar. And they were able to make use of the media attention they had, the Democrats. And for one time in a while, we were able to control the airwaves and make it about the issues that matter. One thing I wanted to ask you, were you surprised that, because I know TMZ reported that Beyonce was going to perform, and I was getting my cowboy hat ready. Were you?
Yeah, that was brilliant.
What are your thoughts?
That was hilarious. The whole thing. Well, first of all, as a certified Beehive person, anytime Beyonce is doing anything, it's a big deal, because she doesn't, I know she's such a huge star, but she doesn't just, come out, like that. She might get the popos or whatever, but she's grown up and she's performed so much that people, are just used to her performing, but she's really not out there outside of her concerts performing or showing up anywhere. So it's a big deal, just period, in the industry in her fan base, in the world, people who, you know, she can garner attention. So anytime her name comes up, it's just going to be a buzz, like no pun intended. So everyone was talking about that for a day. And then Taylor Swift, that was a whole other fandom where, you know, it was rumored, was she going to show up, you know? And for those people who do know about Beyonce, like I guess there's just times where she will, you know, she might be willing to do something and then maybe she changes her mind, not like without, you know, outside the contract or, you know, anything like that, but, you know, she will sometimes decide last minute if she is or going to not do something. So you don't know. And that's that surprise effect that she's been able to master. So it was funny for me as a beehiver to see how that energy impacted this whole other, you know, political industry on this huge historical night. So that was because we go through stuff like that all the time where you think she's gonna perform somewhere and then she doesn't. But it was kind of exciting and funny. Even the letdown when it was maybe a moment. I mean, I wasn't like that let down because again, I know how she'll, you know, this happens sometimes, but it was the whole thing, it worked because so many people did hang around and they watched Harris's speech all the way through the end to the balloons because they thought Beyonce was coming out. So that was pretty funny. I'm trying to find this meme. There's one of Doug and saying like Doug spread this rumor. But what was shocking was that TMZ, because I totally posted it, but it was when TMZ reported it. And
Right.
even though TMZ reports, you know, trashy things sometimes and you know, stuff like that, they are a pretty good source. Like they do not just break any old kind of information. So even I mean, if somebody did do that, it's like they kind of not exposed, but they tripped up TMZ in a way because normally they, you know, when they break a story, it's true. So
Yeah, I was shocked by that as well.
I know that was pretty brilliant. But low key, if Beyonce and Taylor, first of all, Beyonce's involved, just the Freedom song is
Yep.
the campaign song. So she, you know, gave the signature on that for the permission for the CARES campaign to use it, and they've been using it for quite some time. But if they are going to use Beyonce and Taylor, I would have loved to see it out on the campaign trail. So I'm kind of glad they didn't, you know, use all that star power and influence then. And hopefully they are going to do, especially Taylor, because Beyonce's done things on the campaign trail for several presidents and presidential hopefuls. But I would like to see Taylor get out there, if you know, Savannah, Georgia, or Atlanta, or Michigan, or I don't know, wherever, Arizona, I don't know, wherever her fan base, you know, I would love to see her show up like, you know, last day of voter registration or early voting or the day before election day or something.
Yeah, I could definitely see strategically them deploying her Taylor Swift closer to election time, more towards, I don't know, maybe end of October, November to really get that vote out, especially the youth vote. I could see that.
Yeah. Also, there's let me see if I can find it. Yeah, and the thing is, those things work. I know, you know, a lot of times, you know, people are like, oh, you know, celebrity endorsements, you know, don't work, or, you know, the Democrats use Hollywood too much. And there are, you know, there are fair criticisms, you know, sometimes on that. And, you know, but we are dealing with America, the United States of America, and we are definitely a pop culture, you know, entertainment driven place, even if now they are the influencers and stuff like that. But in order to be able to get people to different demographics to pay attention and to move, sometimes those celebrities oftentimes can be of assistance. I know for me, I saw it firsthand in 08 when Jay-Z and Beyonce came to South Florida, to the Fort Lauderdale, Miami area, and it was right before the voter registration deadline. And they traveled to several of our offices, the Obama offices in South Florida, around Fort Lauderdale and like Lauderhill and Miramar, I think. And then Jay-Z did a free concert. The like that Saturday, Friday or Saturday. So maybe they came to town like on a Thursday, they did the concert on a Friday, and then, you know, the voter registration deadline maybe was ending that Monday or Tuesday the next week. he, just by doing that and Beyonce coming too, we were able to secure 7,000 more voter registrations than we had before. And that was a huge, I mean, and we didn't even have, this was before, you know, social media was huge. I think only Facebook was like 2 years old. So that was major, just to bank 7,000 more votes. And then, you know, those people are more likely to go tell someone else, and so on and so forth. So I'm praying and hoping that Taylor, she's like, you know, she's huge right now. And it would be nice to see her, you know, get out there and really move the needle. And I know she could do it.
Exactly. She's a childless cat lady.
Right. Definitely that she needs to be out. I mean, and yeah, that was like the whole thing too, because I don't know, but there was a whole thing around the Super Bowl where MAGA was getting mad at Travis and Taylor, and it was all kind of weird stuff. But then she did do that Time cover of her with the cats. And so I'm like, what is this all connected? You know, I mean, I'm not a Swiftie, and I
And then there's also the issue of Trump using artificial intelligence to make it seem like Taylor Swift is endorsing him. And I
Yeah.
believe the first time you've really seen artificial intelligence creep its way into politics, and of course, it would be Trump who would weaponize this against his political opponent to spread misinformation.
Yes. And it to me is, again, so Trump and Vance, they're not doing anything to appeal to women. You know, they like to talk about things regarding women, our bodies, our health, you know, what we should and shouldn't be doing, all these other things. But then they're not making really in any real appeal to women or policy or anything. Like, I don't ever see them meeting or doing anything with women, you know, no town halls or round tables or discussions or, you know, anything else. And so what it just seems like they're doing is taking hits at women, you know, instead of trying to appeal to them, and trying to pit women against each other, I believe, because I do think we have this issue of reproductive health and, you know, certain views about should we have autonomy, women have autonomy over our bodies and things like that, which is something that is like a general conversation regarding women. So instead of them, you know, kind of expounding on what they would do there, they just want to see how they can divide. And one way is through that comment about the childless cat ladies. And, you know, Taylor doesn't have children, you know, yes, she's with, you know, Travis now, but she's not married, you know, and things are changing in this country for whatever reasons, and whether people like it or not, where you do have more, I think we talked about this a little bit last week, like you do have more women maybe who don't have kids or are waiting or don't want children, or they have other opportunities and or they, you know, whatever it is. And so they're trying to slice and dice, I feel like, how they're viewing women, and Taylor is used all the time in pop culture to relay different messages in terms of womanhood and whiteness and all of these, you know, different things. So we'll keep an eye on that. I don't think this is the last we're going to hear of Taylor Swift being used, especially by Vance and Trump, to further their message.
Unfortunately not.
I know. What about, let me see, we'll wrap up in a second, but anything else on the convention that you want to just touch on or highlight or shout out?
Yeah, Biden's day one speech, incredibly emotional. I believe we had predictions last week where, you know, I figured he was going to use a lot of appeals for unity, calls for unity, and that he was going to, you know, play to the hearts of people, which is classic Joe Biden. I believe he had a hero's welcome, a hero's goodbye. I believe he knew that that was probably the last major speech of his political career. And, you know, like I said, I've had my differences with some of his policies, but in that moment, he really just the true definition of a public servant. He put his ego aside. I love this country, is what he said. I love this job, but I love this country more. And we need more public servants like that. And he's just a true example of what that should look like.
Yes, I agree with everything you're saying. And, I have a lot of love and respect for Joe. And, it's bittersweet, but it's more sweet because he definitely, his legacy will definitely be intact. And it showed how much he does love his country, and that he was like, it's totally the opposite of like a RFK, you know what I mean? In terms of, and I'm not saying, I don't want to be like, oh, he doesn't love his country, but what I mean is, if RFK's whole thing is just to, throw off the Dems and stop them or whatever, then okay, I see how he's getting with Trump. But if it's about something else, it doesn't line up in terms of what's important for our country as a whole, and him aligning himself with Trump. That's just my opinion. But in terms of President Biden, the fact that he saw and understood that, the polling was going in a direction and it was starting to impact the congressional members, and he did have that huge stumble with the debate, and thankfully there were other people, including Kamala, who were able to take over the mantle. But it just so happened Vice President Harris was the one who stood up and ran. Nobody else challenged her. No one else seemed to have wanted it. I do think one critique that I've heard, and it's not really so much for us or even supporters or Democrats or anything like that, but there are people who, just not even so that they so much have questions. They understand that, Biden was not doing well and it was looking like he was going to lose based on polling from years and years, prior. But, they did want to maybe hear a little bit more of like, why Harris? And I do think he addressed, I think he did support Harris, but there were critiques about like, people wanted to hear more about Harris in terms of him working with her, in the administration, and he has a bird's eye, or not bird's eye, but he has a view of what's actually happening. So maybe he'll do that more on the campaign trail or through interviews, and stuff like that. But they've been a great team, and he did highlight a lot of, he included her as well in a lot of the work that his administration has been able to do, but then create enough distance where he was able to stand in what his work was and his legacy. So we'll see.
I'm thinking that might have been strategic, because with Harris's new policy plan that she put out, I believe she also wants to distance herself from the Biden administration. Currently, she's getting blamed for what's happening with the border. She's getting blamed for the economy right now. So that might have been strategic, just to sort of recap everything Biden did during his term. He briefly and lightly touched upon them working together. But I believe going forward, he'll probably be more active on the campaign trail, and rallying for Kamala, but giving her that space to develop her own brand and her own message and what she wants to do policy-wise.
Absolutely. And I mean, and given the circumstances, it's one thing if, he just decided not to run for reelection, and then he's out there making it all about him, and everything, and not as much about her. But it's another thing when he has had this 50-year career, that's coming to a close, and then the circumstances and how everything shook out, even though they shook out, and it couldn't have gone any better in terms of how they were able to unify and integrate everything and just make the choices of the VP and go right into the convention, and everyone show up again about the United States and our country and democracy and everything else. That says a lot. So, I give them grace on that. I didn't have like a huge issue with it, but for those people who are undecided or independent and maybe don't even know all the history of Biden and, Harris and all of this stuff, someone just tuning in, I could see, where they're coming from. But I think you're right. I mean, she has to be able to develop her own presidential stance, or persona as president, and she has to have her policy and her team, and that is something I hope that we start to see more of, because I'm enjoying it. I mean, I definitely I felt like her presence and her team and that energy was definitely felt in the convention. I cannot imagine what it would have been like if it was Biden Harris, no shade, but it would have just been different. But it felt, even though it felt like a regular DNC convention, it did feel fresh, like a kind of a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, I just sense a different energy. There's just a more enthusiasm with this convention. And I think people are excited about this candidate, which is Kamala. She's a minority woman running for president. And like you said, I don't believe we would have had the same enthusiasm with Biden. I mean, we've seen this movie before. It had been just the same. It'd been two white guys running against each other, Trump versus Biden. And I believe the country, especially the youth vote, that demographic, they've had enough of that. They want a candidate who is a little bit younger, who they can relate to, who is a more, in terms of, she was a minority woman, just a more progressive candidate. And like I said, goes to show you have better candidates running in the Democratic Party, you're going to get a better response from voters. And so I'm hoping that years from now, they'll look at this moment, the Democratic Party, when they go to look for talent to run in the future.
Absolutely. It's so funny. I watched I like to listen to all different, perspectives and focus groups and things. And it was a group of journalists and political strategists, and they're all either Republican, non-Trumpers, or independents, a little mix of everything. I think there was one guy who's a Democrat, but it was about eight of them talking, over a Zoom. And this one man, it's like, I don't even want to highlight the information, but this one man, he said something about, and when you watch the Democratic convention, what did he say? Something about the country's not 70% women. It's not, it's not all the minorities. And when you watch, like, pretty much, he's like, if you're an alien from another country and you come and, you looked at their convention, you wouldn't think that, or you would think that it was mostly, women and, I don't want to be race. And then he like stops. I'm like, this sounds so crazy. I'm like, have you not seen a Trump rally? You know what I mean? And I know some are better than others in terms of how they try to, but like, it's usually a lot of white men, and I mean, come on. But it was so wild to see this man say this, and then like the majority of this group, really like, yeah. I'm like, yeah, you see how he feels. You know what I mean? Like, and it's just so ridiculous, because I'm just like, that's not the fault of the Democrats. Like, that is their party, because they're offering policies and they have people who look like, the country, and making policies for not just people who look like them, but they can do that as well as make policies that benefit Americans in general, regardless, of party. But then yet they, on the Republican side, or at least not even Republican, but Trump, because there's so many Republicans supporting Harris now, whoever, is left that's supporting Trump and MAGA and everybody else, they are not even trying to appeal to anybody else. I mean, and it's not even like they're totally even trying to appeal to white men per se. I mean, they are, but they're not, they're not really presenting policies, they're more, stoking division, cultural war things. So I don't know. It's just shocking.
Yeah, because one of the winning issues for Trump is the economy. He's been able to sort of sell that he can get the economy back to where it was when he was president. So you would think he would lead with that first, but he's not even leading with that. He's just doing personal attacks on Kamala, and it hasn't been effective with his polling. So I guess that's a good thing for the Democrats, that he's not having like a 5-step plan on how he's going to get the economy back. In the meantime, the Democrats need to really start thinking about how they want to handle the economy going forward. Kamala needs to go into these town halls with her 5-step plan on what she wants to do. Day one, I want to do this. I want to do this. And I think that's a really great way for her to sort of seize that winning policy issue from Trump, and make it work for her.
I wonder if I'm trying to think if somebody did this, but something maybe like her first 100 days. I mean, I know you can't like out, but like maybe if there's at least one or two things that she knows that she can, fairly, effortlessly do regardless of the circumstances, those first 100 days, or even that strong possibility. I think something like that, like you were saying, some 5-point or something plan on the economy, because that's of course. And what was interesting is that Walmart slashed prices on, I think, like 6,000 products or something like that. Don't quote me, but it's out there. But I even noticed when I went to a grocery store the other day that I had not been to in a while because of prices, but I noticed there was a savings, there that wasn't before. Now, I'm not saying it's only because of what Kamala proposed in terms of making sure that the corporations and companies that price gouge, specifically, because there was some misinformation around or misunderstanding around that. But she's, was specifically talking about when those companies who price gouge, and it's illegal, or just in a way that, they need to have oversight, not like she's just trying to control, pricing or anything like that. But it's just interesting how that was something she said on the campaign trail, but then yet we're seeing this reduction in some of the inflation, and you're feeling a little bit on the ground. So that again just shows me like, and I liked how she said too, she's listening, so that is one thing people have said about Kamala Harris, is that she does listen. And that is so important. I'm learning that myself. But she does hear those critiques. And when people were saying they needed more policy, she did deliver some more policy. But I do feel like people just need to give a little bit of grace and a little bit of time, because so much has happened. I mean, myself included, because I'm interested in hearing her policies as well.
Yeah, and I think so much has happened that we forget it's only been a month, really, since Biden dropped out. Like I said, I think she's making great pace. That first week that that Biden dropped out, she let him kind of have his going away speech. She focused on fundraising. She was able to get the Democrats to rally around her, and then she worked on picking her VP. So it makes sense a month later to start focusing more on policy. I think you don't want to rush things. You need to develop your brand, and she has the task to separate herself from the Biden administration, because they're trying to blame her for what's going on with the economy and immigration. So she's taking her time, rightfully so, to get those policy initiatives right. And I believe, there's criticism that she's not doing enough media interviews. I think that's going to come in time, but she's building a strong foundation to be able to start being more in front of the media, answering questions. And I think that will come eventually.
Yeah, I think what we'll do, because we're going to wrap up, but what we'll do, I think we should use, since we have such a short amount of time, so because the convention, it's such a weird, different campaign, because it's like we're in it, like, all right, convention is over now, but then she just became the candidate a month ago. So it's like,
Right.
You can't make up everything, but there's certain things you do have to make up, like introduce her again to the American people who don't know her as well, even though, or who don't want to research or whatever, but it's just part of the, you have to reintroduce a person, see the policies, so on and so forth. But I think what we'll do is, there was so much greatness that I saw, just different little things during the convention that, we can cover, but we can also kind of use it as a way to, kind of remember why we're doing what we're doing as we, go forward and things unfold. But I did want to just highlight how we kind of even came into this whole, this whole Facebook Live is through, okay, here we go, is through our op-eds. And so, sorry, I'm a little, hold on, technical difficulty here. Oh, where did you go? Sorry, I can't see us. Okay, so the way we even came into having this Facebook Live was through, Lynn had the brilliant idea of us writing op-eds, and she helped me and another friend of mine pen some op-eds, and she's written some of her own, and they're on Medium. And we're going to continue. So if there's anything you want us to either talk about here, or if some of you want to come on and share a headline or weigh in, please let us know. And then, but yeah, we ended up writing these op-eds, which did get the attention of Governor Andy Beshear. And so he has our op-eds and was very grateful. And I'll have to tell that story another time, but he was very grateful to receive them. And we just wrote a little bit about the Southern political landscape, the importance of the South and the Sun Belt in terms of the electoral map and the organizing that's going on there. And just wanting to draw attention to another part of the country that we don't, talk enough about. And a lot of the mainstream media is not really understanding the Southern electorate. So we'll continue to get into that later, but wanted to share that with you all. And then we will be here next week around the same time, 5 p.m. Eastern, and we'll go over the stories about the headlines, upcoming headlines. And again, if you want to join our Yes We Can virtual group, Team Battleground. We're focusing on all the battlegrounds, not all of them, some of the battleground states, or as we were needed out there. So you can join us every Wednesday. We do a virtual call on Zoom, so you can register and we'll send you the Zoom link. Otherwise, join the Team Stacey Abrams Facebook group. You can find information there, as well as our personal pages. So tomorrow, Monday, is Mental Health Mondays. Join me for meditation and breath work, just to take a little breather from the election. And yeah, again, I like to end with my favorite quotes. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. And so that's what we're doing here. So thank you so much for coming. And thank you, Lynn.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I'll go through and do my best to attach any links. I'm going to put this on YouTube as well. And again, we're just, just providing some insights as we move into this season. I think it's getting ready to get really wacky as we close out August, going into the fall.
It is, but I feel confident that Tim Waltz is going to bring that smoke that we need. He's got a good, so I'm confident.
Wait, I'm sorry, you said that he has a good what?
He has a good clapback.
Oh, he does.
So I'm just fine.
Me too. So it's exciting. We're going to be, leading into the debate September 10th. If Trump shows up and has it or not, or if he tries to do something else. So we'll tune into that. But I think it's gonna be, I'm definitely confident in Harris Walz. I don't underestimate, Trump at all. And I just think it's gonna be a very interesting election season, but it's been a ride so far. So just grateful to be riding this joy energy.
I mean, it's no telling what is going to happen this week politically, but we'll be here to discuss it. So
absolutely. All right. Well, have a wonderful evening, everyone. Thank you. All right.